What was that?
Did you guys just do a whistle?
No.
Weirdness on the Chestnut Ridge.
Yeah.
I don't know where to begin. We went to an area where there had been, a few weeks ago, some reports of hearing some strange sounds coming out of the forest. So a week after that, we investigated and we had some weird things happen to us.
The three of us were down in an area below a cemetery, and we started off doing a wood knock.
And we got a couple replies there. I didn't hear the 2 replies of the 3 knocks that I did, but somebody had confirmed that there were 2 louder knocks replying to what I had.
And immediately heard a howl, high-pitched howl, back at us. And I told Ricky to do a whistle, and right after he did the whistle, we heard what sounded like a wind chime. Not like completely, the wind blowing and ringing him constantly, like a single, tink. And it sounded like a metal or a fork hitting a glass. I can't explain that. So we did the whistle again, and it happened again in a different location. We had all gone up to the cemetery to see if maybe there were chimes on any of the graves, but nothing. So while we were up there, we heard it again behind us. So it wasn't in the cemetery.
So I was a little bit late getting to everything, and I just had passed you and talked to a couple other people, and then we went to an area that I had a previous situation at. The only time I got really creeped out last night, though, is while we were doing some calls back and forth between the groups, there sounded like a rock got thrown into the trees about 100 feet down in front of us, downhill from us, and I got that feeling again, that real creepy feeling.
And as we were standing further up the road, I saw what looked like a flashlight go through the trees. And I had asked Derek, I'd asked Chris if any of them were down in the woods. They said no. At one point, we even saw a light come on. We had Chris turn the lights off and on his truck, and that's what we saw. So we knew it wasn't anybody else.
Get nervous out in the woods?
Oh, I do. I think that that's just part of who we are as human beings. We're used to electricity, and we're used to... You heard that sound?
That had to be them, right? What time is it? Check it.
9:46. 9:46.
9:46. We just heard it very clear.
It was just one.
Is that abnormal? If it was them doing a call?
Yeah. Usually whenever researchers come out here, they kind of go overboard and kind of inundate the landscape with, either knocks or howls to try to get whatever's out here stirred up. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So right now we heard one very distinct howl and 2 very faint wood knocks. From our perception here, it looks like it's coming from that hollow. I mean, that's what it looks like. But the only time that I've been out in the woods, and it happened to me twice, the only time that I could ever say that I came up with a definitive wood knock was just one. And
that has to be them. That's straight down there.
Yeah. And that was 3. But I was saying the only time that I ever came up with a definitive wood knock whenever I was doing research even sound like a major league baseball player hitting a home run. It was just really quick. Oh yeah, there they are, right there.
So that's Heather and Zach.
Yeah.
They're walking down there. We're gonna know in a minute because they're walking.
Yeah.
Those sounds are coming from the cave.
They sure were. Now, of course, the terrain could explain some of the echoes being kicked around and everything, but it did sound oddly clear and from a different direction.
Dude, I feel like they're not walking in the same direction
Yeah.
from the sounds we heard.
In my opinion, from what I heard, it sounded as if it was coming like in the hollow or on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let's go up about another 100 yards and then we'll be pretty far.
See, there's a car coming.
Oh yeah,
That's interesting.
that's extremely interesting.
So there's other people up here.
People were partying down there too because I found another bottle. So
There you go.
you hear that?
Oh yeah. That's coming right through here.
Yep.
So we got movement now.
Okay, so that was movement we heard as we were walking up here. We sounded like something shifted. So whatever is moving up there. It's not making any deliberate steps, but it's definitely following us. Let's try another wood knot. Where would you suggest I do it?
Well, up here is going to be difficult. I mean, you could do that on that.
on that
but-
tree now.
Yeah. Can you tell right now, are they directly basically over this hill down there?
There's a little bit of a valley between you, yeah, but they are.
But they're right
yeah,
down there.
like,
Okay,
if you
so
can
that's
see the mountain line on that other side over there, they're kind of on halfway
Okay.
up it, on a shelf over there.
Okay, because we've been hearing noise over there and I couldn't tell.
Well,
if
they
that was them.
did a knock
Yeah.
like a little bit ago, right before I came up.
They do a call, do you know?
I don't know.
Do you have you don't have walkie-talkie?
No, I have one, but I don't know if anybody else is on. My wife has the opposite one. to
13.
these.
Try 13.
I don't. Mine are only 2 channel.
Okay.
These are ones we use for our stuff. But yeah, your closest buildings and stuff are straight this way, and probably half mile. There's a pretty major road. Well, it's the one you guys would have came up.
Yeah.
Because you guys came up and came down from the top, right? Yeah. So that road is only about a half mile over that way. But there's nothing else anywhere near, besides that road. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just gonna walk up to ride up here real quick, and we might just sit quiet for a couple minutes.
Cool.
Like a lot of researchers will come into areas and say that they can sense that there's something out there. And the more people I've talked to and the more times I've been out researching, I'm actually giving it more and more credence, because if people are indeed sensing something, what's acting upon their bodies? And one of the things that could explain it would be the idea of infrasound. And we do know that infrasound can impact people, and one of the reasons why we understand it is because it has a military component to it. We know that infrasound can change the way a person interacts with their environment. A lot of people talk about, quote unquote, paranormal experience. There's something out there other than themselves. If you are an animal, if you're a self-aware animal, and you want to be territorial without being confrontational, one of the best uses of that would be infrasound, because you can get somebody out of your area without even having any contact with them. So it's very interesting to think that we know biologically infrasound does indeed exist. And if this creature is capable of producing infrasound, that might be why some people get into areas and they talk about being freaked out, or they're having experiences that nobody else can see.
I did a couple whistles, and my hearing's not too good, so I kept hearing them say they're hearing wind chimes.
Ricky's down at the other location, and every time he whistles, they're getting a response that sounds like someone taking a fork and tapping it against a glass bottle. Like it's going tink, 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 but it's only when he whistles.
If I heard it very faintly, maybe one time, but they said it happened every time I whistled. I don't know. I've also read some places that hearing wind chimes in the woods are angelic. So, I mean, there's a cemetery right there, so I'm not too sure about it.
Did they do a call earlier?
They've done a couple, yeah.
A single call?
No, they were doing whoops.
We didn't hear that.
We didn't hear that.
And I think we have a really clear call then.
Good.
And it wasn't a whoop. It was like
A long drawn out.
no.
Not even drawn. No.
It was so mundane sounding that it was like I just assumed, well, they must have just goofed off and they're just doing a single call.
They did some knocks, and they're in that direction down there, but the knocks are echoing through the valley carrying up here. So you're hearing like a knock, knock, knock.
Yeah.
And it's a specific hollow sound because he's using an axe handle. He's done 3 or 4 sets of them. We can hear them, and then they've done a couple of whoop calls, and they're just short whoop, whoop, and that's it.
No.
That's all we heard.
We haven't done any calls up here. I haven't done any wood knocks, so it's just us kind of standing here.
This was a lot. How many minutes? That was like 20 minutes ago or something.
Yeah.
I heard it.
9:46. 9:46.
Yeah, we wrote down the time exactly, just because
Okay.
I don't know if they're gonna memorize when they did it or whatever. But
They just did a vocalization and we could not hear it.
Just like that whoop?
Yep, right now.
We should walk back up there and see.
Alright, can you explain what we're doing now?
All right, so right now we are back to the area where we heard the one definitive vocalization. So to make sure to debunk anything that's happening, we're having another one set up. Somebody's going to make a call, the other team, and we'll see if we can hear it from this perspective.
Yeah. But we can hear it. So I'm assuming it was them earlier. But that wasn't at all what it sounded like. Very different. But I mean, I'm assuming it was them because we could hear it. It seemed to be in the general direction of where we heard what we heard.
I didn't hear them make any single calls.
Yeah.
I heard the whoops, but
What was it with all the wood knocking you guys were doing?
that was them.
Yeah, we found out that it was them.
It sounded like it was right behind us, yeah.
No,
Oh.
we don't have any. You have the axe handle. I don't have
No,
it now.
Was it?
Yeah, it's going out.
Jesus.
We had 3, like, but then we had like 2, like, boom, boom. You didn't hear
that
that?
wasn't-
right here.
No, that
Yeah,
wasn't.
there's
And
an
it sounded
owl
like
there.
it was you guys
No,
right here doing
we don't have any.
We were right there.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah,
have
that's
any.
definitely an owl.
Okay, so after I did my yell, both Chris and we heard another higher pitched howl.
Didn't I hear the owl?
We're hearing an owl, but it's not higher pitched than what you
Can you
did.
ask them about the wood knocks?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why were they doing wood knocks?
Like repeatedly.
Now,
When you guys were doing wood knocks, how many wood knocks were you doing at a time?
3.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Did they do 3 wood knocks and then like 2 power knocks immediately after it?
Did you do 3 wood knocks and then 2 power knocks right after it?
Negative.
I think we might have heard something responding to them knocking.
We thought something was in your truck.
That's what it sounded like. It sounded like your truck door slamming, but it sounded
No.
like it was right behind
Yeah.
us.
Like
Like
right
right up
behind
here
us.
around this bend. I'm confused as to how that wasn't you guys.
We didn't hear it.
It sounded like somebody was just playing around. That's really what it sounded like. Hopefully it's on that.
I don't know how I wouldn't catch the initial knocks. The power knocks were seemed more distant and subtle despite being significantly louder.
It sounded like somebody was attacking your truck. Honest to goodness, that's not what it sounded like.
You guys didn't put anything in the truck?
Well, I
or-
closed the tailgate just as you were walking back down here. I
Not
walked
to-
in.
no. This was 2.
No, we were standing right here.
Yeah, you guys didn't hear that at all.
No,
Was it like Uncle Chris or any of them?
no.
No.
I can clearly hear. He has a distinct sound with his axe handle. It's a.
Yeah, I think that was the initial thing we heard.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is if we didn't hear an answer from up on the ridge.
That's what it sounded like. Absolutely.
We just assumed it was
Yeah.
you guys.
There's no doubt about it.
There was nothing here.
Knock, 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 and then boom, boom.
No. I don't have an axe handle.
We literally don't have anything.
You don't have anything.
No.
Yeah.
This would have been like.
Yeah. But what happened was something. It wasn't like your typical, like a Bigfoot. Like this was something like weird going on. Like something like almost playing with us. If that is the case.
That's why I said this place is different. It's the ridge.
There's only one logical conclusion. It says f***ing fairies. I'm telling you, man. That's what it is. That is the secret to all this stuff.
What I'm mystified by is how you guys wouldn't have heard it.
Nah,
'Cause it's just so.
It was almost like it was like meant just for us, in a very, very limited location. Because, honest to goodness, like if you would put me on a witness stand, I would say it was like right over our shoulder. It was Eric and Josh making points. That's the.
Yeah, I can do a call. Here, hold this wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call in the direction.
Did you guys hear that?
You hearing that?
It was a
coyote. Y'all heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Check with Chris and see if he's making any calls. That's a pretty good call. It's still going.
It's still going.
Eric, that is a coyote coming across. It's right in between Chris and us.
It's a coyote.
That's not a coyote.
That's not a coyote.
That's not a coyote.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's a coyote.
Sounds like it's in pain.
It might be a coyote. It stopped. Whatever it was, it went on for quite some time and then it just quit.
It's definitely a coyote.
It sounded really distant, whatever it was, its first. But it went on for quite some time, whatever it was. I don't know. And it didn't sound like a coyote to me, but
It didn't sound like a coyote to me too. First of all, it was just one.
Court, did you think that sounded like a coyote?
They run in packs, don't they?
Yeah.
It sounded like an injured coyote, maybe.
Okay.
it was a warbling sound, which is
It sounded hurt.
maybe.
Court's pretty good on animal stuff. She's a vet.
Ah,
Oh, really?
She's the pro
Nice.
when it comes to.
I think the highlight of the night was the strange lights that were seen by 10, 12 people, and not in just one location, but everywhere.
how far up are Chris and Josh?
What did they say they saw?
A ball of light in the woods.
I might walk back up that way then, right? Because they're talking about up this direction. Do you want to walk up
Sure,
there?
I'll walk up with
I
you.
already drugged Ron up there a couple times.
Yeah, I'll go up with you. I'll be back, guys.
And then I looked up the road and I saw, again, like I would describe it like a lightning bug almost up in the trees. And there was a real dark area up there. And I would see it flash, I'd see it move a little bit and then disappear. And I saw that once. And then my son saw it twice in the same area.
What did they see?
I'm seeing the lights. Ron is now.
We saw the one white light, and I had thought somebody was coming down the road with a flashlight. So one of the other investigators, Tom, went up to see what was going on because we thought some of the other team was coming down.
So then Tom also saw a blue light, but he saw it out his periphery. And when he went to look, it was gone.
Say what?
The light that Josh and I are seeing is actually moving. It appears to be rising in altitude and then falling again, but it's actually within the trees.
They're looking at it?
You're looking at it right now?
Negative, it's not there now.
So we all started talking about this, and we heard over the radio Ron say,
Okay, there are lights. There are lights behind you. Well, actually, there's lights all around you guys.
And we are looking and we couldn't see anything.
All of a sudden, right between these tree lines, there was about 3, and then
We thought they were coming back. We thought they were coming back.
It turned into 3, but then it turned into 1.
It might have been Chris's headlights. He's heading back down that way.
No. It's not there.
Headlight.
Hey, you know what? Can we walk down that direction?
Yeah.
And we just couldn't confirm that nobody was between us at first, so we weren't sure. But then once we figured out there was nobody in that section of road, we just kept seeing that light.
I just saw one single light that looked like a flashlight, and it was in between us.
10-4, that's exactly what we were seeing. Exactly what we were seeing. It's actually between our location and your location.
Well, then all of a sudden it looked like a white light and a red light, almost like a truck.
And I had thought Chris had driven down and was sitting at the intersection. And he said, I'm not there.
We're seeing the light right now. There's 3 of them.
What? 10-4, where are you at?
I see him too.
Ron, ask if they have lights on at the cemetery.
We're on the road towards you guys. We're not even nowhere near the cemetery. Then you have your lights on. Right now, all our lights are out.
Okay, we're coming.
And Tom ran up and it just disappeared.
They're right up there. They're all the way up there. Did you guys see the ones over here?
Yes.
I have no idea.
I think I saw my first thing.
That was not, that was very, I can't really.
Yeah. There were lights. We had a fun little run through the woods to get here.
It legitimately looked like a truck pulled like close, and I couldn't gauge how far the intersection was. So it looked like you saw like headlights of a truck going this way, and you saw like the brake light, the red light. He walked towards it, and then it disappeared. So I did see. Now I'm seeing a red light out there in the woods now.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
So nobody pulled a car up here?
Nothing. Nothing.
No one's been near cars.
Yeah, what we saw was in the woods.
No, yeah, like right here.
White light.
Bright ass light.
That's what I saw back in the clearing, and I started going toward it.
Yes.
I saw what I thought was a couple little blue balls of light a little to the side, so I'm thinking, okay, it's a car, it's something. And wherever the puddle is back there, about 2 to 5 feet on the other side of the puddle, as I'm walking toward it, there's a bright ball of light, and then all of a sudden a red ball of light about this big.
I saw the red.
And then I thought it was Seth or somebody, and I was getting ready to talk to him, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared.
Everybody started running up towards Tom, and I stayed back. And as I'm slowly walking up, another flash came out of the trees that 10 feet. Looked like someone turned a flashlight on right in my face, and it went out. 10 feet right here.
That was so
bright ass lit up the side of my face and then gone. It was bright enough that it was reflecting in a puddle on the ground.
I have no explanation for what it was. I don't think anybody that experienced it has an explanation. It's just there, and we all saw it, and just another one of those weird things up here.
I like to connect the dots because nothing exists on its own. So if you went over to Europe 200 years ago, if you would hear knocks in the woods, if you would see lights, you would say that it was haunted. You know, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So whatever's going on here is part of that historiosity, if you will. It's part of that tradition. But the thing is, like, whenever people go on investigations, that very rarely ever happens, you know. These are like anecdotal things people say. But the idea of lights leading people deeper into the woods or to confuse people, I mean, we can find evidence of that going back 1,000 years. We're dealing with something far deeper, and that's why I said I think there's something even connected to the land itself.
No, that's Seth.
That's Seth.
The thing is, Eric. Yeah.
We're either having something really strange going on or it's a mass hallucination.
It's fucking will-o'-the-wisp, man. It's those fucking berries, I'm telling you.
What we saw in the woods looked like somebody walking with 3 cell phones. It looked like flashlight beams.
No, they weren't flashlight. No. Yeah, these were.
I think I have mine in my car.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, what did you guys see?
Crazy lights, man. Yeah.
Where at?
Over there.
Over there.
Yep. And I happen to look right over here, and I see what looks to be 3 bluish green lights bouncing through the trees, like someone's carrying cell phones and walking.
Okay.
And then 3 became 4 with a red light.
Okay.
The red light went out, and the 3 continued, and we lost them.
I walked away because Zach is saying he saw something. Zach literally laughs at all of this. Like, Zach does not believe any of this stuff's real. I couldn't hear myself think, so I walked away. Were you guys doing wood knocks up by the cars?
Nope.
There were at least 3 wood knocks up by the cars while all that was going on.
We didn't hear anything. We're standing here talking, we hear a thud.
Okay.
And it sounded like somebody threw a backpack or gym bag in the back of my truck.
Okay.
And then a few minutes later, Josh saw like a small lightning bug light floating around the top of my truck, and then it went out.
It did like 3 little circles and just went out.
See,
so when we saw the lights, Chris, that were on this road, they weren't far down the road, were they? Maybe 50 yards, 75 yards?
The ones actually on the road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought that was them?
Yeah.
That wasn't them. They were 150 to 200 yards down the road.
Really?
And they came out of the woods over here. Right?
Yeah, the other side of
about
those
there.
trees.
Yeah, just the other side of that tree's right there. We thought that was you.
And the ones we were seeing in the trees were closer.
They were.
They're claiming like right
There's a
up
light
in
right
their
there.
face.
Anybody on this route coming down towards us right now?
Unless it's
Looks like somebody's walking towards us, towards
Someone has a light on.
Somebody has a light on because they're walking towards us.
yeah.
There shouldn't be anybody in between us, Eric. There's that light again.
That's probably Ron. It's got to be Ron.
Ron, do you have your light on?
Negative, but I see the light too.
Holy shit.
There's no way.
Down here with us.
Is there somebody?
Are you
by
kidding me?
themselves?
Ron and Josh are down here, and it's in between us. We got it on camera.
I'm on camera too. Let's go toward it.
Changing
We're seeing it too. We're looking right at it, and it's in the middle of the road. Does anybody have their light on?
Just went out.
As soon as you started moving towards it.
That's on camera.
Yeah, I got it too.
That can't be. That's got to be one.
There it is.
Again. You got it.
There's no way.
It's got to be them. If we get up there and that group is in that area, then this is some sort of like light reflecting or something. There's no one here. You got to be kidding. They were up there, but they were a good ways away, and that was not this far.
Spook lights, ghost lights, orbs. They have been seen for centuries. Some say they're fairies trying to lure people deep into the woods to their untimely demise. Others think they are spirits trying to make contact. All we really know is that sometimes we see them and other times we don't. However, with so many people witnessing these strange lights in the forest, one begins to question if there's some connection between them and Sasquatch.
The funny thing about this phenomena itself is it's really come into play in, say, the last 6 or so years. Now, remember, there's been Bigfoot sightings here for decades, right? All across Pennsylvania, Ohio. Just in the last 5 or 6 years, people are starting to say, hey, you know what? I was in the woods. I saw lights flying around. Like, they look like spheres. They look like baseballs, bigger, some are basketballs, lighted, whether they're white, orange, blue. As I was out looking for Bigfoot at night.
The first mystery light that I had ever seen on the Chestnut Ridge was probably about 15 or 20 years ago. And I just assumed that it was an aircraft on the horizon. It was, you would hold your hand out, you know, at arm's length. It was probably about the size of your fingernail, your thumb fingernail. And it looked just to be a red light that was going on the horizon. I thought, great, a plane. Until that red light now was in front of the trees. And it started weaving in and out of the trees. That was my first occasion with what would be called an earth light.
I experienced a strange light phenomena with, it was actually Rick Chirby and his fiance. She had noticed this light floating amongst the treetops. You know, again, not something localized, not something you can pinpoint that it was focused coming from one area. And I believe Tom got it on video, and it lasted just a little while before it kind of faded out, but it was a pretty pronounced orbish light that just floated amongst the treetops and then just disappeared.
Smaller lights, orbs if you want to call them, moving in like circular motions and figure 8 motions. I've experienced almost like somebody coming through the woods swinging like a lantern, walking, and then would just go away.
I'm one of these people that like to investigate on certain types of the year. And one of the most outstanding displays of earth lights that I had ever seen was on Midsummer, on June 21st, probably about 10 years ago, whenever it seemed that the entire environment around me was nothing but LED lights. And it seemed as if these lights also moved in tandem, as if they were going en masse, so that they would actually cast a shadow whenever they moved. So it seemed as if all these lights were acting independently of each other, but whenever they move, they act as one single organism.
A couple of years ago in particular, myself, Eric Altman, Ricky Chirby were up in the ridge and, you know, just doing some Bigfoot calls, parked at a secluded location. And after about an hour, we started to see, I would say, roughly softball-sized lights. I would say amber to a whitish color bouncing around in the trees. They would start here and you would see them, you know, go in and out of focus. Then they'd disappear, and about a minute later you'd see them maybe 20 yards to the right. They were much too big to be any type of firefly or anything like that, and they were within the trees.
Oftentimes these Bigfoot will be seen. You will see these people will see a light sphere, orb, either before the sighting, during the sighting, when you see a Bigfoot, or a lot of times after the sighting. And then you may hear growling, or they may see a Bigfoot, or they may not. Is there a connection? It's like, boy, that's the $1 million question, right?
Just prior to those lights appearing, we had heard a couple very distinct whoop calls from the ravine down where the trees were coming up. And shortly after the lights stopped, Eric and I both saw a strange light in the sky that was stationary, moved slowly for about 5 seconds, and then just completely disappeared. So we had what a lot of people would consider to be a haunting phenomenon with the lights. We had Bigfoot activity, and then a potential UFO sighting. So that was all within one night, which is pretty typical of the ridge.
So the idea of these mystery lights being in areas where people are investigating Bigfoot, right? Of course, I mean, there is definitely a connection there. The idea of the places where I go, where people are witnessing UFO activity, where people are witnessing Dogman activity, and even Thunderbird activity, all these locations that these researchers are investigating are all places that are also synonymous with Earth lights.
We don't know if these orbs are energy, if they're sentient, if they're actual alive being, we don't know. Could they be a probe from an alien craft? I know I'm throwing some stuff out there, so we don't know. And you'll hear me say, I don't know a lot, and I'm okay with that because we're just researching. We're researching the phenomena. We're talking to people, starting to talk to people all across the country.
Bigfoot is much stranger than I had ever imagined. For a lack of a better term, we might be dealing with something that's interdimensional, that there's a physical and a non-physical component to whatever it is we're dealing with. It's so strange and so odd. I said years ago, the phenomenon is so strange it protects itself. And there's a lot more of this mystery than any of us have any idea what we're dealing with. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think the government knows. I believe they're aware of it. They're trying to figure out themselves.
They seem to be sentient, is what they seem to have intelligence. If you read, and we're looking back at a lot of reports, the reports of them, they are through all the magazines and all the backup material we have, which we have a lot. And a lot of them, they'll seem to follow you. They interact with you. Some people were shot at them and they, kind of dispersed. Some of the things they do just defy logistics. Some of them, they can come through a house. They can somehow change their mass and come through a wall.
And the other time that I had seen them was also whenever we had these kind of whisperings going on as well too. I can vividly remember red and blue lights that were jumping back and forth across the forest trail. And after those lights had subsided, that's whenever these whispers had occurred.
So I've heard it on 3 or 4 different occasions, and it almost sounds like someone's carrying a conversation on or talking, but you cannot make out what they're saying. It's like a mumbling, a very low mumbling, or even a whispering. Like they're trying to say something to you, but you can't hear them, but you can definitely hear that something's being said. That's happened on 3 or 4 different occasions in different locations. I have a thermal FLIR that I use, so when I hear this stuff, I go after to see what it is, to see if it's a person, a hunter, a hiker, a camper, whatever, and I've never seen the source of it. As far as reports go, I've received, in conjunction to either a Bigfoot sighting or activity or the strange lights in the forest, I've been told about those as well. Hear people hearing that when they're seeing the lights or prior to or just after. What it is, I have no idea.
We were the only people out probably a good mile or 2 into the woods. Immediately upon hearing the voices, we would shine the lights, we would use thermal imaging, and there was nobody around. There would have been no way for somebody to say, be walking past and us overhear them. There's just no way to explain it.
I'm Dwayne Pintoff, and I have been investigating actively Bigfoot and other phenomena since 1983. I also do paranormal or spirit or ghost investigations. I've been actively doing that since 2004. We went up, Eric and I did, August 15th, which was a Friday night, I believe. And our intention was, because there had been a Bigfoot report that had come in to the group a couple weeks earlier through this Greg that was with Dennis. He knew somebody that was a landowner up there in that area on top of the mountain. And that guy had claimed he had had an encounter with a Bigfoot, which it was less than a mile from where we were inside Quebec Run. Well, there was a lot of private land there, so you only go where you're allowed to be able to access the woods, and that Quebec Run happens to be one of those places. But we felt like it was close enough vicinity to this man's property that we might be able to get some kind of evidence or activity that would be beneficial. So we went up there, just him and I. There's no one back there when you get to this location. We were just going to sit there, and it was probably about 7 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock. Darkness set in early that night. Why, I can't, we're at such a high elevation there, when the sun went over the hillside, it's like that thickness there was just dark. It was a dark, I've never been in anywhere other than a cave or a basement where I've turned the lights off and couldn't see my hand or any movement, or I couldn't see any residual lights even in the sky. So we're sitting there in pitch dark, Eric and me, side by side. We couldn't see each other, but we're whispering and we're listening. And I got bored, and I said, we're here for Bigfoot, but I'm gonna get up and do a wood knock. I said, let's just let them know we're here, because if they're on the other side of the woods and we're here, they're not gonna come over here. So I walked over to this large oak tree. I had my wood knocker, and as I did like one hard wood knock, and I'm standing there and I'm just like scouring the area, just hoping something, I'll see maybe movement. Well, as I'm doing it, as it being dark, off at what seemed to be a very extreme distance was a orange, we're talking bright orange, sunset orange, round object. And it's not doing any movement, it's not doing any flashing, it's just there. I'm looking at it, not thinking too much about it, because I know there's silos around there and people have their marking lights on top for aircraft, and I'm thinking that must be what that is. Somebody's put an amber instead of a red light on top of their silo. And I hadn't told Eric anything about that, because I didn't think it was anything about it. So I walk back over and I sit down and we sit there listening for several more minutes and nothing's happening. And maybe 15, 20 minutes go by. I get back up and I'm kind of walking down the road and I come back up and I say, I'm gonna do another. And as I go back to the same tree, I look back in that direction and there's nothing there for the first time I look. And I did another wood knock and I go back and sit down. Well, I still didn't say anything because I'm thinking, again, it's a light. Maybe someone turned it off. I didn't pay much more attention to it. A few more minutes went by, I'm getting up again. I'm not a person that likes to sit too long. So I said, I'm gonna go walk around here and just kind of listen, go over this edge and go over here. Maybe I'll hear walking or something. So when I got up and walked over to the tree, I looked back. Now, what had been this orange is now about this big, and it's still the same color. And I can't tell any movement from it, but it's definitely larger than what I first saw. And I'm like, okay, what am I looking at? So I came back over to Eric where he could hear me talk. I said, Eric, I'm looking at something. I want you to see it because I can't make out what it is, but it's really, really weird. So he got up enough where he could lean and look over and he said, you talking about that orange object? I said, yeah. And I didn't tell him how it had changed size yet. And he said, well, it's probably somebody camping on the other ridge over there, or maybe that was a marker light on top of a silo. I said, but Eric, let me tell you, it's changed size. I said, I'm not imagining things. It's twice, 3 times bigger than what first I saw it. And I said, I just didn't say anything, but now I'm curious what it is. So he still didn't seem interested. As I stood there watching it and still didn't know what I'm looking at, he said, I'm gonna walk on the other side. This is like a gravel loop. He said, I'm gonna walk on the other side, Dwayne, and if you hear anything, it's probably me. And if you see or hear anything, let me know, holler over at me. I said, same here. So he walked out of there and I didn't know where he was at. So I'm standing there watching this thing. I could tell after watching it a few more minutes, it was coming, it was traveling, very slow. And when it got where I couldn't again tell if I was 100, 200 yards, it changed shape. It went from this round orange object to what I described at my distance, because I believe I know exactly where it was, about a 2-foot rectangular object. And now it's gone from bright orange to a maize-colored yellow. And I'm not sure what I'm watching. I'm like having a big time watching this. And I'm watching this thing, and it's in there bobbing around, and it looks like it's going up and coming down to ground level. And again, I'm speculating because I couldn't see anything but the object. And I knew it was behind trees because it would kind of fade behind a tree and then come back out visible. And it went on for several minutes. Well, again, being a paranormal person as well as Bigfoot, and I've done a lot of in-depth research on Indian spirits, orbs that they have in their history. And this is a big area where the Six Nations, Iroquois, Senecas, all had encampments back in the 1700s. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm looking at a spiritual orb, but why did it change shape? And as it's moving around, it started changing color from a maize yellow to a white with a very cold blue, and it didn't change size. And it's still doing its little drifting around. After several minutes, it came out of what I thought was probably the canopy that it had been in, and it went further back into the woods, and it went up high to treetop level. And about that time is when Eric came back around. I heard him crunching on the gravel as he was walking up, and I looked back over my shoulder and I said, Eric, is that you? And he said, yeah. I said, you need to come here. I said, you know the orange object that I showed you before you walked around the other side? And he said, yeah. I said, well, it's changed. It's not the same object, and I want you to stand here and look at it. So we're standing side by side in the road, and he said, yeah, what is that? I said, yeah, that's that object. It's changed shape again. Now, it looked like it was a spear or spherical size object, and it had protrusions that came out on the side of it. And at this distance, we could just tell it was still the maize yellow. And it was just, we watched it. It was doing methodical movement, and it would come back down to what we figured was ground level. And it just kept doing this up and down like it was examining the trees and the hillside that it had gone back to. Well, as we're watching, it started coming in our direction because it got larger and got larger and got larger. And I said, Eric, what the heck is that? He said, I don't know, Dwayne. I said, okay, well, it's coming our way, whatever it is. We're about to get a good look at it. And as it got closer to us, probably about 2 feet in length this way, and it probably was at least 3 inches or so in diameter. And that's when you could see, it looked like, if you remember the lava lamps of the 70s, it had that kind of flowing movement inside. It looked like there was some kind of energy happening in the bottom of it. And Eric noticed that the bottom looked like a tail. He said, do you see that? He said, it looks like the bottom's whipping like a tail. And I said, yeah, I can see that. So here it's coming quiet, no sound whatsoever. We're not moving, and we have not turned a light on all this time to identify our presence. It came up, and it just stationary. But you could see this movement and the wiggle of the tail, and it's just there. And I said, Eric, what in God's name is that? How are we going to define this? How are we going to describe this when we start telling people what we're watching? And he said, I don't know. Well, at that time, he said, I wonder what it'll do. And before I could even say, I don't think that's a good idea, he had a military-grade flashlight on his hip. He takes it out, and he shines this beam of light on this thing. That's when it got extremely crazy. Again, we're in black darkness except this thing, and it's not really emitting any light away from it. It's just there in total darkness, suspended in animation in front of us. And as he hits it with this bright beam of light, I can only describe it looked like a portal, literally a mechanical door opened up in front of it, within a foot of it. And as that happened, at the angle we were standing, it was almost like a 45-degree angle. We're looking into the door, and the door, whatever opened, a beam of light came out of it. A white, bright light came out, engulfed this object. You could see it was that pea green military naval ship green on the inside of that wall that we were facing. And this object just goes in, just glides in, this portal shuts. And the only thing that we happened to notice when that all happened, because we were standing in total blackness again, is if you've ever struck a welding arc or something, sometimes you get these sparkles. There was all these electrical charges drifting down, and then they just seemed to burn up and disappear. And we're standing there in pitch darkness again. I said, Eric, what in God's name did we just watch? He said, Dwayne, I don't have a clue. 15, 20 minutes go by. Now we're getting into the 10 o'clock hour, into the 10:30 hour. I said, Eric, we're here for Bigfoot. Let's get back to Bigfoot, because obviously it's got to be around here. So I go back to the initial tree that I started with to do another wood knock. And when I did, the orange orb was on its way toward us. And it's like the second time I saw it, size. I looked back at Eric. I said, Eric, you need to come over here now. I said, it's back and it's coming. And he said, what is? I said, the orb. I said, you're going to be here with me. We're not taking our eyes off of it this time. Let's see what happens. Like I tell people this, the best I can describe the movement was like you see in The Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy gets to Oz and the fairy comes off the hillside and you see this swirling, that was the movement this thing was making, but it wasn't as pronounced as that. It was more like very subtle, and you could see it was swirling coming. It come up, and again, I believe in 100 yards, and it's this big when it finally just stops. And it's hovering. We can tell it's hovering. We can't tell how high off the ground it is, but it's bright orange, and it's just sitting there. And we're not sure what its next move is going to be. And suddenly, it took a 90-degree turn, and it went over, and there's an outcrop rock slope that goes up, and it navigated that. We watched it until it got about where we thought the top of that outcrop rock is, and it dropped over the side. And now we're standing there in the darkness again. I said, okay, Eric, what the heck? How are we going to talk about this? We need to go check this out. He said, Dwayne, I'll tell you right now, I don't feel good being here anymore. I'm ready to leave. I don't know what we're dealing with. I'm out of here. So I said, okay, I'm with you, because I'm not staying out here by myself with something like that.
You know, the question of, is the Chestnut Ridge, has all this activity and this spectacular events because of some sort of paranormal phenomena? I don't know. You've heard people saying there's portals here, that these things, and not just Bigfoot, but a lot of these, paranormal activities happen because of these portal or these. There's something about this place that is unique, right? You would have to find some way to prove that to me to believe it. I've known researchers that said they've seen gateways open and disappear at whim. I've never experienced it. Yeah, they're good researchers, but sometimes when you're after something for so long, you can convince yourself that these things are possible and these things happen. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying it's a potentiality you have to look out for. You have people involved in this search for a long time. In Pennsylvania, a lot of that tends to get paranormal, and that's outside my wheelhouse because it's hard enough to prove there's an ape-like creature roaming the forests of Pennsylvania without throwing dimensional doorways and fairy lights and everything else into it. Let's pick one thing, let's get it proven, and then we can start working on the others.
Again, I know it may sound crazy. Some of these things I'm talking about, I'm going to be honest, they sound crazy. I mean, from researching bipedal wolf-like creatures to gargoyles to to Bigfoot, for your average person, it's like these things can't exist.
You compound this mystery so much, it becomes sensational and laughable to folks outside the field, and actually a lot of folks in the field. It doesn't get that scientific credibility anymore, and I think that's a big difference when you look at how Pennsylvania research is approached as opposed to other areas of the country.
I kind of view the ridge as it as a portal area, much like Point Pleasant, West Virginia, maybe the Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know why, but this just seems to be an area that the high strangeness is just drawn here. It seems like it's home. You know, it's really hard to explain, hard to put into words.
It's a lot of limestone caves, there's a lot of things. So this could bring into effect one of the portals. When all of these phenomena tend to take place in close proximity, you wonder if it is some kind of a temporal anomaly where somehow, that we don't know, signs that we cannot even comprehend, somehow these window areas open up. Creatures, UFOs, you get the list, name them, can come through.
When you're out and you experience some of these things and you see these lights or you hear the whispering, you know, it's one thing to talk about them afterwards, but when you actually experience them, there's kind of a feeling of awe, because you know that there's no way to rationally explain these. You know there's nobody walking through. You know that, the light you saw in the sky or in the trees is not anything you can explain. And you know that the ridge has a very, very big reputation for these phenomena. So it can be a little bit overwhelming. It can be a little, awe-inspiring in a way.
Perhaps individuals do experience different things that happen out here. And when you start investigating one phenomena, it's very comfortable to start slipping into other phenomena, right? To start researching, and then they start to blend. I don't know if they actually happen or we start blending those things together. And do some researchers do it to be significant? Absolutely. It sells books, right? Like, I don't know if, and I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's highly unlikely that it's possible to me. And it just doesn't, at this point, doesn't make any sense to keep compounding it. Let's one thing at a time. What
causes it, I don't know. But I really think the ridge, is one of those areas that it's just going to happen year after year. And it historically has happened year after year. It's not just one or two things this year and then a few years later you hear more reports. This is continually every year, and it's in every area of the paranormal, with the hauntings, the UFOs, Bigfoots, other cryptids. Several years back, somebody even reported seeing a dragon flying over the ridge.
One of the patterns found years ago was there seems to be some type of energy connection. And in a lot of these cases, people bring it up themselves. Well, the thing was seen right under high-tension power lines. It's going up a gas line. This is something a lot of people keep bringing up. I think there's an energy connection to a lot of the phenomena we're dealing with. Until we have more data, we just can't be sure. But there's something going on there.
They've always talked about different dimensions, how many different dimensions there are. And if the dimensions, there's dimension right here, they're all over. If somehow, that we don't know, they can open up occasionally. Something could come through. A lot of people think some of your Thunderbird phenomena are pterodactyls or teratorns, which were ancient prehistoric birds or mammals.
So the idea of portals being opened up on the ridge is something that I have talked to a lot of people about. And whenever I had that one particular encounter at the very base of the ridge, the idea of this light kind of flashing on, something was going on, okay? A light had ignited and flickered off. And it felt to me that a doorway was open, that something was able to step through that doorway and was now a part of the world in which I resided in. Also, I've talked to people who have been lost on the Chestnut Ridge. There is one, she's actually a principal of the high school. She and her family were up on the Chestnut Ridge for a walk, and they got lost up there overnight. I mean, you're 15 minutes away from a Walmart, and all you have to do is walk downhill and you're off the ridge. She was a very intelligent woman, and she got lost up there because she simply said that she could not find her way back. So these kind of things happen in an area that's very close to society, right? You know, we are building things right up to the very foot of the Chestnut Ridge, but people are still getting lost up there, and people are still seeing things that should not be there.
There have been incidents for years reported all along the ridge. Westmoreland Fayette has always been historically very active, year after year, even the last few years. But there are some more specific locations where, whatever reason, the phenomena seems to target or concentrate on for whatever reason. And some of these have a long history of these things taking place. So there are some areas, and these are on private property, where there's been a repeated history of people reporting Bigfoot, other cryptids, strange sounds, other phenomena going on. And so that's very, very fascinating.
So as I've delved deeper into the rabbit hole of not only the Chestnut Ridge, but of the paranormal, it seems to me that we are missing out on something, or at least I'm missing out on something. So we have reports of Bigfoot, we have reports of Thunderbirds, and we have reports of UFOs and dogmen. If all of these creatures are simultaneously existing in an area that only covers about 75 miles, in which the Chestnut Ridge does, we would be stumbling over these things, right? They would be more often seen. Nobody is finding a 10-foot long feather from a Thunderbird. Nobody's Prius windshield is getting crushed by a Thunderbird flying overhead and pooping on it. So I'm thinking there's something more going on here.
But this phenomenon is very interesting because, again, it can be sporadic, it can happen almost anywhere, but there appears to be certain geographical locations where the phenomena seems to focus on. And that's where you have this history of repeated Bigfoot encounters, cryptid encounters, UFO sightings, strange sounds and screams and howls and all kind of other phenomena is being reported. And in some cases, people reporting other type of paranormal experiences as well.
So the idea of the Goblin Universe, a lot of times whenever I use the word fairy, it turns a lot of people off because you automatically think of the Victorian, little creature with diaphanous wings and the Marilyn Monroe body. But that truly was not the way the fairies were perceived. For maybe a better term, let's call it elementals. So what is an elemental? It's an inherent intelligence within the environment itself. So to me, the Goblin Universe represents the capabilities of a particular area to manifest itself in different forms. One of the hallmarks of fairy lore is the idea of glamour, which we still use now to refer to women's makeup and things. But the original medieval meaning means to appear differently than you are. Shape-shifting is what we would call it today. I interviewed a gentleman who was walking along the Chestnut Ridge, and he came to a small grove, and in that grove he saw two creatures wrestling with each other. This sounds very, very strange, but whenever he told me the story, he was very lucid and very sober too, I might point out. And he saw these two creatures just gallivanting. He could not remember if they had clothes on or not, but he said if they did have clothes on, it matched the environment so seamlessly it was hard to tell. But he watched it for a few moments, and then he said one of the creatures noticed him, and then it took off and it vanished into the side of the hill. Now we wanted to point out that there was no hole in the side of the hill, it just vanished and became part of the environment. And then what happened to the other creature is what's so striking to me. He said that it went through a series of shapeshifts until it became a very large bird and flew away. And as I connect the dots with other tales of this, in Ireland we have a fairy creature that is said also to be able to assume the form of a very large bird. So that got me to thinking, when we talk about Thunderbirds and Bigfoot, what happens if these creatures that we are pursuing are nothing more than an energy that are capable of making you believe that you're seeing something that's there, and we are calling it Bigfoot and we're calling it Dogmen, but it's coming from a source within ourselves that these creatures are able to manifest within us.